Both of these vaccines are mRNA vaccines, messenger RNA vaccines. Well, the two mRNA vaccines are intended to be a 2-dose regimen. You vaccinate a person and then they return 3 or 4 weeks later, depending on the vaccine, for their second dose. Some people are wondering about the potential for just 1 dose of these mRNA vaccines. Notably, an opinion article in the New York Times published just today, I believe this morning, question the possibility of getting more people vaccinated by administering just 1 of the 2 intended doses. I'm wondering what your thoughts are on this and what is the impact of these kinds of conversations on the public's behavior?
No, it's an important question. I think that, so part of this is recognizing, I mean, there are 300 different approaches that are being taken globally, and you're probably tracking every one of those. But I think what's interesting is that there's so much interest, so much attention. Any scientist who has an approach to the vaccine has come forward, and we're going to learn a lot from that. Not all 300 horses are going to end the race, but I think we're going to learn a lot in that process. But as far as this 1 and 2 dose, there are a couple of companies that are focusing on a single dose, and I think that's really important when we think about feasibility. And from a program standpoint, finding a person for the first time to get vaccinated is hard enough. Getting them to come back when they need to is really a much more complicated challenge, which we're going to have to deal with to try to make sure we provide protection. But the question is really important. What was intriguing, and I think that's probably the best you can say from the data, was that both of these mRNA vaccines are 2-dose vaccines. The initial clinical trials, the phase 1 and phase 2 trials, are designed to determine what's the right dose, what's the right dose interval, and it shows that the maximum immune response is after 2 doses. But because they were looking intensively in these studies, you could follow people after that first dose, and you saw that at about the 2-week mark, 10 days, 14 days, that's where there was a splitting in the curve. What that means is that at about 14 days, some people, even after a first dose, seem to be protected when compared to the placebo. Interesting, encouraging, but very small numbers. And while we've seen these, what's called a point estimate, when you compare those numbers, is in the 50-ish percentages, that's intriguing, but there's such small numbers, the confidence limits, as a statistician say, is quite wide. And if there was 1 or 2 differences in those who was in the placebo group or not, it would be quite different. The short story is, until we know a lot more, 2 doses is what we need, and giving a first dose could actually cause a difficulty if people don't get the full immunity that they need. And in doing so, we'll be using a lot of vaccines that might not be protecting the population as we think.
Right, that length of the immunity is still a question with the 2-dose vaccine, right? So if we have people just getting 1 dose of a 2-dose schedule, then that really complicates the data picture.
No, and in fact, so looking at the immunology of coronaviruses and other vaccines, we do know that we don't expect lifelong protection, but maybe we'll be surprised. And given what we know about vaccinology and immune response, a second dose is likely to give a better and longer response.